As you heard all day yesterday and already this morning, the work that we're talking about is not business as usual. This session is titled Restructuring Delivery and is one of the major themes in the completion plan. And it links to what Stan Jones was talking about yesterday, where we're looking at fundamentally rethinking how we do and offer delivery within our institutions. Things like block schedules, things like the ability to schedule in ways that students, particularly working students, can think about and understand things in advance so that they can plan things out ahead. Things like distance learning that we'll be talking about in the next session, cohort enrollment, increasing transparency and accountability. So today you're going to hear from institutions that are moving ahead in that realm, and so it is my privilege at this point to introduce Ziz Zefrin, who is Vice President, of course, of Academic Affairs at Southern Poly. Zvi.
Hi, folks. As she said, I'm Zvi Zefrin. I'm the person with the hardest to spell name in the university system of Georgia. And so we're doing our part in terms of trying to increase degree completion. Anybody, there's a little known rule at SPSU, anybody who learns to successfully spell my name gets an automatic PhD. And so what we're going to be talking about is our articulation with the technical college system of Georgia, which we think is a convergent low residency pathway towards degree completion. And this originally came about way back in 2001 when we had a enhancement team visiting our campus, and the goal was to try to figure out why weren't we growing at SPSU. Our enrollment had been largely flat for the previous several years, and so the Board of Regents was concerned about this. They commissioned this enhancement team. They came by, and one of the conclusions that they drew was to mitigate the trend of decreasing enrollment, where we got encouraged to further explore opportunities for inter-system collaboration, which is kind of a fancy way of them saying work with the TCSGs, okay, which were called the DTAE at that time. And I know that all of you are aware that when you get a statement like this coming to you from the Board of Regents, of course you instantly snap to attention, okay? And so our faculty promptly voted it down. So 2006, right, I had arrived at SPSU in 2005, and President Rossbacher and I had met, and we were talking about, again, looking for ways to make the university grow. And so one of the things that we thought about was going back to this TCSG articulation. And so we wanted to meet with the technical college presidents. They were kind enough to meet with us. And you can imagine, given the previous round of efforts, they had some apprehension as to whether we were actually interested in going to ultimately deliver the goods. But we met with them and we agreed that we had complementary statewide missions, SPSU being a technology-based university, them being the technical college system, of course, and so we were both focused on application-oriented degree programs, we were very technology-focused, and we saw the possibility of many mutually beneficial articulations. So the challenge that we were facing was that at the time, the technical college system degrees were, in effect, not transferable. Okay, they were meant to be terminal degrees. And so when students transferred from the TCSG into the USG, the few who did so, the students lost the vast majority of their credits. It was not uncommon for a student to come in with 60 credits, or our equivalent of 60 credits, from the technical colleges, think that they were going to be starting as a junior, go through the transfer credit process, and wind up with 6 credits, okay, and basically be told that they had to start over again. This was the norm, okay, and you can imagine how happy most of those students were to hear that. even students who were majoring in degree programs that were closely related to degree programs of ours. So for example, a TCSG student who might be majoring in electronics, who was interested in our program in electrical engineering technology, would find that even when they got credits, those credits were obtained in very complex ways. So they might have taken, for example, 4 courses in the technical college system, and then we'd say, well, if you come to SPSU and you take an additional bridge course, then we'll give you 6 USG credits for this. And so, in other words, they had to take 4 courses with them, 1 course with us, in order to get credit for 2 courses. Okay, and you can imagine that didn't work real well either. And so the technical college system was also in transition to SACS accreditation at this time, and obviously in terms of transferring credits, if the institution isn't SACS accredited, you've got some interesting information you have to obtain in order to prove to SACS that the appropriate guarantees are there. Okay, and they were also in the process of beginning to plan for semester conversion. And finally, we needed to figure out how to articulate and offer programs on a statewide basis, because the various units of the technical college system are all over the state. And in fact, one of the first TCSG units who was interested in doing this was Albany Technical College, which is a good distance from Marietta. And so we decided that we needed to address some guiding principles, and those guiding principles were, we wanted a seamless transfer between our 2 systems with minimal or 0 credit loss. We needed to align our courses so that we wouldn't have any of these bridge courses being necessary. We wanted to make the courses available to students in their own communities, because we wanted to promote rural development, and we didn't want students who are down in Valdosta, for example, to have to come up to Marietta, at least not very often, because that would exclude adult students, that would exclude married students, that would exclude students who have a life, okay? And we wanted to have, therefore, delivery methods that were amenable to non-traditional students, to working adults. We wanted the articulation to be balanced, meaning we wanted 2 years of this to be in the TCSG, 2 years to be with us, and we didn't want the 2 years in the TCSG to be all the core. We wanted them to have part of the core, and we wanted to deliver part of the core. So we wanted a balanced articulation. And of course, we could only do this with the SACS accredited TCSGs, but the good news was at the time we pursued this, this was almost all of them, because they were either in candidacy or had already completed candidacy. So the time was right. So we had 2 stages of articulation. The first stage was signed on a system-wide basis with the technical colleges. Okay, and it was for degrees which were Bachelor of Applied Science degrees. Okay, on our end, the degree options were a BAS in Information Technology, Manufacturing Operations, Supply Chain Logistics, and Business Management. Now, in case you think this is only 4 degrees, I should point out to you that from the TCSG side, this is more than 60 degree programs, because multiple TCSG degree programs feed into each one of these degrees. The second step was just completed in 2011, which is offering Bachelor of Science degrees in Engineering Technology in MET, EET, and IET. And these involve a 2-year degree offered by the technical colleges that pre-articulates with these. And now our third step, of course, which is happening right now, is trying to figure out how to coordinate this with Complete College Georgia. So how's it worked out? Well, it's in its infancy still, okay, but at the moment we've got approximately 200 students who are in the BAS part of the articulation. The BSET part of the articulation is just beginning this year, and you can see North Georgia Technical College is the first adopter. They've got 38 students in this program. Other TCSGs are joining in. There are about half a dozen of them that are part of this now. All of them can join in because it's a system-wide articulation. In terms of how is the enrollment growing, I heard from our admission office that in fact the number of applicants for the 2 articulation programs this year, in other words for this coming fall, exceeds the total enrollment already. Okay, so it's going to more than double. And so something that's very important is the issue of scalability. And so currently most courses are either live or online, but what we're moving towards is a convergence of live and online. And so these converged courses are going to have both live and online students simultaneously, supported by both synchronous and asynchronous delivery, streaming video, podcasts, that sort of thing. We're trying to access and to make use of stronger learning management resources. We're looking at developing our own channel on Roku, Apple TV, something equivalent to that. Okay, we're utilizing improved technology using Echo 360 lecture capture, right, life-size and Cisco classrooms, so just a bunch of these things. Okay, kind of the big issue, and I'll talk a little more about that in a moment, is the laboratory access, because of course many of our programs are very laboratory intensive. So how do you do things like this at a distance? But a big issue that I think we're going to need to address, and as a system, is developing a database for approved TCSG courses, because as the system wants us to transfer more courses from the TCSG, SACS still requires us to prove that at the time that the course was taken, appropriate credentials and content were on hand at the TCSG unit, and rather than having each of us have to individually determine this for every student for every course, we need a central repository of this sort of information. Like I said, the laboratories are a challenge. Currently, all labs are offered in an on-campus delivery mode only. So in phase one, what we're doing is we're bundling laboratories for weekend delivery on campus. So instead of taking the traditional one laboratory a week, students will be expected to come onto campus perhaps 3 times in a semester, okay, and they'll be taking 4 laboratories at a time. So in weeks 5, 9, and 13, for example, of a semester. Okay, in phase 2, we're going to move towards more technical remediation of this. And so the laboratories are going to be provided by simulation, by remote access, or live at locations supported by TCSG facilities. And so we're going to be selecting TCSG partners geographically located in particular areas of the state so that students will not have to travel far to take the laboratory live when it's appropriate to take it live. Online delivery requires us to think about our business model. Everybody has read many articles about the faculty role changing, okay, as going from the so-called sage on the stage to the guide on the side, and requiring faculty roles to migrate towards assessment of learning. And so an interesting question that we're going to, again, have to address as a system is what to charge for this and how. Okay, because our current pricing models really don't work in this new normal. Okay, that we've got lots of competition where the content is available routinely online for free. Okay, and so if that's the majority of what we charge for, we've got a problem in the business model. What we like about this in terms of its interface with Complete College Georgia is it improves access by enhancing availability of courses online, and the low residency model allows adult, rural, military students to have access, which they didn't before for programs like this. It reduces costs and improves efficiency because of this converged model, right? Allows us to maximize enrollment in our class and gives students maximum choices in terms of how they access the courses. It enhances our collaboration, obviously, with the Technical College System of Georgia in a mission-appropriate way. It provides options for the almost 200,000 TCSG students to continue their educations, even to a graduate level. We're happy to tell you that, in fact, the first of the TCSG students in our BAS in IT program is now in the MS in IT program. And so they're now getting master's degrees. We're looking at articulations with the TCSG in science education to address a problem you heard yesterday, which is large numbers of nursing students can't get into nursing programs and they have nowhere to go. And so we're trying to provide an alternative pathway into teachers of health, into people doing health biology, right, which will provide pathways for these very good students to complete their degrees. And it will generate thereby more graduates in critical STEM areas. And so we're incorporating, obviously, prior learning assessment, okay, and that's quite amenable to this. And so these are appropriate degrees for a diverse population, and we're looking at industrial certifications right now in various fields and how to credentialize them so that students, again, who have got lots of prior learning in industrial areas will be able to get degrees related to those things on a shorter pathway. And so that's why we're an ALC member, that's why we're part of the Soldiers to Scholars program. And finally, this also gives additional benefits because it gives a midpoint exit and reentry option for students in the TCSG system. We're beginning to get interest from technical colleges outside the state, right, who are interested in articulating with us as well. And we're also working with other polytechnic universities nationwide in terms of having this become a model program for other technical colleges, systems, and other polytechnics. And so thanks very much for your kind attention.
Hello, I'm Liz Wilson, the Dean of the Business School at Georgia Southwestern State University. And I'll allow Phil to introduce himself when he comes in. We've been asked to talk to you today about advising a structure model for shortened time to degree. And 2 years ago, Chancellor Davis, at a quarterly meeting of the USG presidents, threw out several challenges, one of which was to urge the presidents to find a way to allow students to finish a 4-year baccalaureate in 3 years. Georgia Perimeter's president, Anthony Tricoli, and Georgia Southwestern's president, Kendall Blanchard, both thought that there was a way to do this. And so they met together and then with the chancellor and found that there was a way to do this. Georgia Southwestern had just begun offering management and accounting degrees through an online delivery system. So we met with Georgia Perimeter and developed a model that allowed Georgia Perimeter students to finish their associate's degree in 1.5 years at Georgia Perimeter in Atlanta or at one of their campuses in a traditional face-to-face delivery mode. Then they would transfer to Georgia Southwestern and in a compressed way finish their degree requirements in an AACSB accredited business school in 1.5 years. We offer all of our required business courses for accounting and management online every semester, so they were able to do that in a compressed period of time. This past fall, the first student graduated from this program, and she graduated with honors. And we're very proud of this, and we feel that, and Philip will talk to you about the numbers, but in the 1.5 years or so since this program has been in place, we've had one person graduate. We have another 2 scheduled to graduate this semester, at the end of this semester. We currently have 62 students involved in our program with Georgia Southwestern, and as Phil will tell you, we have a number more that are in the pipeline that have already signed on with Georgia Perimeter. Phil, I'm going to let you, okay. We're going to be kind of swapping back and forth here.
My name is Phil Smith, and I'm the former Dean of Business at Georgia Perimeter College. As Liz mentioned, we met actually at the Decatur campus of Georgia Perimeter College and began to work on creating an accelerated degree program. Now, this is a standard BBA in management and accounting. It's just that we are creating a program where students will complete all the degree requirements in 9 semesters. And as you can see, it's really a full-time proposition, 3 fall, 3 spring, 3 summer terms. Nothing's cut out, but it is a very structured, full-time program. As you can see, they basically take a full load each term, somewhere between 10 and 16 semester hours. You can probably figure when the 10 is during the summer. But basically, they're taking 15, 16 hours every single term that they are in the program. We'll talk a little bit about some of the structure that had to be put in place, and this was part of the MOU that the 2 institutions had to sign. But one of the big things was the support services. Simple things such as how are textbooks going to be handled, and that was easily done through the registration. As Liz mentioned in her opening comments, students could actually take courses either on campus or they could take them online, and actually everything in the associate's program is offered online. So as the program turned out, as we began to talk, the entire BBA in management, the entire BBA in accounting can be done through distance education. So students are not necessarily required to come to Georgia Southwestern or Georgia Perimeter College. Georgia Southwestern went through the process of training one of our individuals that would help in the admissions process. So while the students originally start with us and our admission process, we have all our people there, it's very important that we could also answer the questions so we could sell the program to these students. Library access really wasn't an issue, as we all know, with Galileo and the way we can go through any university system library process. Recruitment was something that we had to sit down and really work together, and since most of the students will start at Georgia Perimeter, a majority of the recruitment fell upon Georgia Perimeter College. So we did several things to get the word out. We started by developing a brochure, and in the brochure we provided the structuring, the sequencing of the courses that would be out there. We provided all the information we could about admission processes of both institutions. We developed a website called Fast Track, and I think actually in one of the slides coming up, I'll go ahead and move to there. We have a website that students go out to, and it has about all the information you could possibly want about this program, FAQs, again, the sequencing, contacts, and all these types of things. And then we also had to provide tuition and fees. We had to make sure we had that clean break. I know when I've talked about this program before, people say, well, I thought students couldn't go to 2 institutions in the same semester, and in the program they don't. So there is a clean break that they finish with us. We encourage our students to sign what we call as a tag, and they finish their degree with us, and then they're immediately ready to transfer on to Georgia Southwestern. So those type of things. One of the other things that we were able to do is we did take some advertisements out in some of the local publications. I got the opportunity to do a radio interview on one of the internet stations in Atlanta, which was kind of awakening. I didn't think that many people listened to those things. It was amazing how many hits we got on the website after that thing went out. So we got the word out fairly quickly. Currently, we have over 260 students in the pipeline that have signed up for the program at Georgia Perimeter, and as Liz says, there's 62 right now, former GPC students that are at Georgia Southwestern.
In terms of advising, Georgia Perimeter students or former Georgia Perimeter students are still advised through Georgia Perimeter. Our Director of External Programs coordinates all of the campus coordinators / advisors, and so she's done training with Dr. Cahiga, who is the advisor at Georgia Perimeter. She also advises some of those students, and then also, of course, they've got contact with us on our campus at Georgia Southwestern, and most of the advising, as you might expect, is done electronically online, although, you know, I get phone calls from the students as well, and so we deal back and forth with that. But the bottom line, as Phil said, is with a compressed program like this, these students needed to know ahead of time what to take and when. And so it's a pretty much lockstep program, although, you know, obviously if the classes are offered every semester, they can have some flexibility. But I will say, I think we may have had a record, Phil, I don't know if you know about this or not. I had a student request for this summer. She wanted to take 30 hours. And so I think she was trying to turn it in from a 3-year program into a 1-year program, and we had to tell her that probably wasn't a real good idea. And so she went from her advisor there to me to our vice president, and when none of that worked, she tried to get a transient approval for another school so that she could take some there and some with us, and we caught that as well. But the students that take this track are very goal-oriented. They want to get in and they want to get out. They're not really interested in how the basketball team is doing or what clubs are available. They want to get in. They're very academically focused, and so it's not for everybody. This program is definitely not a degree program that every student is going to benefit from. But it is available, and those students that are very focused, most of our students in this program, but not all, to this point have been non-traditional students. So they may be coming back after working and have been told they need to get a degree for their job or something like that. And so this model, again, while not for every student, has been very successful for the student, because we all know that the non-traditional students, summer is just another semester to them, so they don't take summer off. Our numbers in our online classes for the summer are just about as good as they are for any other semester. So this idea of putting a full-time load in the summer has worked quite well for us, and I think served this population very well.
Yeah, as Liz mentioned, in terms of advisement, at Georgia Perimeter, as I mentioned, we have 260 students in the pipeline. So one of the changes we actually had to make in the past year was we had to bring in all our full-time faculty that teach online. We actually have 6 full-time tenure-track faculty that teach solely online. And so we divided those students up among them. So they actually have an assigned advisor. We do not only through electronic in terms of email, but we've established WIMBA sessions for advisement in the program. We actually do it for all of our business students online, where we have faculty that sit in basically that virtual room. We put out on the website and tell them what time they'll be there, and students can come in and ask questions, and then you can either do it in a group setting, or if you need to, you can go off into a private situation and talk to students specifically and go over some of those situations for grades, or as Liz said, we've had students that have asked for overloads, and we've been pretty steadfast. We have not granted overloads in this program because it is a very strenuous program for most of them. One of the other things that in the program delivery that we've been able to do at Georgia Perimeter, and I know Liz are starting to look more into this at Georgia Southwestern, is we have contracted with a group called Smart Thinking, which provides online tutoring. We have tutoring campuses our tutoring centers on each of our campuses, which students could come into. But we negotiated a contract for a large contract, it turns out, for us with all our online students. And our Vice President of Academic Affairs, Alan Jackson, sitting back there, he can tell you because it comes out of his budget. Very large amount of money, but we buy so many hours of tutoring. We were able to do it for all of our subject areas except computer science. And then we've actually had to negotiate with a different group called Net Tutoring for that one. But we allocate so many hours to each student that they can use for tutoring. As you can probably imagine, that works for most students, because most students, you're happy if they open the book, let alone go to a tutoring center. But we do have several students that will quickly use up their allocation, and then we have to go through a process and a form where they get additional minutes. But tutoring becomes a very large part of this because it is a fully online program, but they are allowed to come in on campus for additional tutoring. As Liz mentioned, one of the major things that makes this program successful is Georgia Southwestern actually contracts with our department chair. He gets a little stipend to assist with the advisement, the admissions, the registration process, which is another thing that, of course, through the online process, you have to provide all these students. As we say, to make it seamless, it's very important that at our end, James Cahiga can make sure students in that semester prior, before they go, that everything is in order. We have to make sure that when those transcripts get sent to Georgia Southwestern on time, we have to make sure that they're in line to get to register for their classes and keep the process going. It's an accelerated program as long as we both can accommodate the students. And so it takes a lot of work, as said, between Shannon and James to get through that.
In terms of tuition, this is a very attractive program to the students. Currently, it's $99 an hour. Sounds like a used car ad. At Georgia Perimeter, sorry about that, Phil. Yeah. $152 and change an hour at Georgia Southwestern. We do attempt to provide similar kinds of opportunities for the students. The main kinds of things they're interested in are the business club kinds of things where we actually have speakers come in and we're able to offer those. We don't have the WIMBA capabilities that Georgia Perimeter has, but we do make them into podcasts, that in our accounting club so that the students can access those. We've coordinated our internship opportunities. We do allow course credit for we allow 3-hour credit for an internship for students, and we've coordinated that. So we've got some in the Atlanta area as well that students are doing. Students are eligible for Beta Gamma Sigma, our business honorary, and many of them have already been inducted. We're inducting, I think, 2 more of these students this semester. into that. Our students in free enterprise, we're working to get that into a distance opportunity as well, and trying to figure out the logistics of how to meld those two teams, the on-campus and online teams, once we go to our regional and national participation or competitions. We're confident that given that we're close to doing that, they're already participating in some of the projects, and so we're trying to find a way to meld them into giving them the opportunities to do some of the networking that occurs at our regional and national conventions.
We'll finish with a picture of our first graduate in the program. This occurred this last December. That is President Blanchard, Georgia Southwestern, awarding the degree. So we have 2 more in the pipeline this May. And it looks like next year we're going to actually get into double digits with graduates. So it's been a good process for our students, or good availability for our students. It's been a boon for Georgia Southwestern's business program because it allowed them to tap the Atlanta market. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Myrna Gantner. I'm an Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of West Georgia. This is my colleague, Dr. Scott Lingrell. He is our Vice President for Student Affairs. And we are going to talk to you about rethinking the little things, the small things that mean a lot to students. As we start this presentation, we're going to start talking to you about culture change. And we're going to finish talking about culture change, because what we're working on right now, and all of these strategies and these wonderful ideas that we're hearing about at this conference, have got to be sustainable. And as we lead change efforts, we've got to find ways to anchor these changes into the culture so that they stay and they remain, and we can build on these changes and constantly improve. So one of the things that happened, I guess Scott got started on a lot of this work earlier than I did, because he's been in this role longer than I have. I joined him in August of 2010. But our institution, under Scott's leadership actually, presented the RPG plan to the Board of Regents in May of 2010. And immediately after making that presentation, coming back to campus, a group of people began to develop what we call the President's Special Commission to improve graduation rates. And then I came on board right at that time, and Scott and I then co-chaired that particular initiative. What we wanted to do was create an environment where it was safe for people to talk about these very hard kinds of issues. We wanted to let the data speak and bring together a group of people. Actually, it was 17 people. 15 of them were key faculty members across campus. A couple of them were professional staff. And we wanted to make this very safe environment for people to have really difficult and hard conversations, because when we start looking at these data, it can be uncomfortable for people. And we wanted people to feel like they could say things and actually explore issues without there being any blame. We kind of laid the ground rules. We said, we're going to set the stage. This is not about finger pointing. This is not about laying blame. This is about asking really difficult questions and actually identifying the problems that really matter, and not the superficial problems, the things that might appear to be problems but aren't going to really get us where we need to go. So we brought this commission together. We built on a lot of prior work, and out of this this particular commission, then we out of the 17 people, we added another 40 later, and spent an entire year working on identifying visions and looking at the data and finding out what the real problems were. This commission then developed a report with 60 different recommendations that a large number of people thought would make a real difference on helping our students get towards their goals of graduation. And from all of those emerged from lots of data and lots of conversations, a year-long project. And then from that, we decided to tackle five of those 60 right away, because we thought that those 5 were kind of low-hanging fruit. They didn't produce a lot of contention on campus when we took it to the larger group, the Faculty Senate. All of this has been through the Faculty Senate. We've had open town meetings. So this has become a part of the conversation at our institution. And we're going to talk to you about a number of those different things that we've been doing, the 5 that we're tackling right now, and then where we're headed.
Great, and so my job is to go through all of our 60 recommendations, so just sit back and relax. No, we're really going to talk about a few of the things that we're doing that are just the small pieces, and those fitting together are really important for everything we do. Now, I have to tell you, I really started this as an associate vice president, so our combination of academic affairs and student affairs and that culture together really has made a huge difference in the way our campus has addressed and adopted many of the things we're doing. Again, these are just a laundry list of some things we're doing, and we'll kind of tie it back up in the end. One of them is this continuous registration, and the concept there was if we really want students to have the ability to kind of be free in their registration processes and make their way through the systems that we have to open this thing up and not have quite so many restrictions all the way along. And one of the things we realized we were doing was limiting the registration periods to just a few days, literally a few days each term for the future registration. And so we entered into a process essentially that got us to what we call continuous registration. Now, it really isn't. We have to shut this thing down to make sure that we get payments and drop students for non-payment and those kind of things. But we really limited the downtime of the system. And the limitations were really an artifact of our previous registration type systems. Of in-person registration and phone registration, where we had to shut things down because systems wouldn't really work well. Well, now we have computing power that lets us register essentially continuously. We still have a open or a registration period. We call that on-time registration. Again, we're kind of norming the process. That's on the next slide. But it helped us become decoupled with advising. And the concept here is you can be advised anytime. And so why do you wait until the time registration starts to be advised? Well, that's a habit. That's a behavior of students. So we want to change that behavior, and that's, again, one of those little things. And certainly much more of a dynamic process. So the thing is, though, that other things then had to change. If we're going to change the registration system, we also have to change the student behavior, the way they pay, the times they pay, the way that we do everything around that. So we, again, did on-time registration. It kind of normed that experience. It sets very clearly that this is the time to do registration. Advising can happen any other time. And again, the students are a little more responsible for that, and you'll see a little bit later on what that means. Our registration hold system. How many of you allow parking fines to hold a registration because you have to collect that $15? Okay, many of you do, right? And part of that is because we have policies around the business practices and processes that kind of require us to get that money. And that may be one thing that we need to suggest to the system office and to the state, that these are the kind of things that a little more flexibility in that place can help us get students registered. We were literally holding a $2,000-$3,000 registration and all of the processes that go along with it and everything we needed to do to get a student set for the next term for a $15 parking fee. And so we threw that model out. We decided on a one-bill system that centralizes those fees. And it wasn't just parking. Library fines, equipment fees, residence hall damage things. So we were holding registration, the very thing that's going to get our students through, for those little things. So we've decided not to do that. So no registrations holds for non-academic or health safety reasons, we still need registration holds for lots of purposes, but not for those little fees. We changed our drop for non-payment process, the very first drop for non-payment. If you have your tuition and fees paid, you get to go through that, because there's a lot of business that happens from that time until we really need to drop you for non-payment at the end. So people who were adding meal plans on the day of that drop for non-payment were getting dropped because they added a meal plan, not because they hadn't paid their tuition and fees. So we started little processes like that that can really help. Again, those students now can really register, the first registration, with those kind of fees and fines on their account, and then we catch them up later with a real zero balance drop. You can't really enroll, you can't continue on in classes with having a zero balance. And again, that's where the 90-day rule comes in, that we are not allowed to let students do any kind of activities if they have a balance that's over 90 days old. Well, our registration period starts before what would be the 90-day period of that term, but we were still putting the hold on immediately. So we're doing things like that to really reduce the restriction of students into the system. More students are eligible to register as we come up to this on-time registration system, and then we're able to take the time to do their systems and processes like financial aid. What we were doing, we were limiting ourselves to that 4 or 5 day period of add drop to do everything for the student when we restricted them from registering earlier. So we're doing those kind of things to make a difference.
The academic standards piece actually got done several years ago. As we began to explore this and saw that, is it really possible for a freshman to be in good academic standing if they're at a 1.6 GPA? That stunned a lot of our faculty. They had no idea that the standards were like that. And we kind of talked about that, when how disingenuous is it to lead a freshman to think that they are in good academic standing when their GPA is at that point and they can't even graduate unless they have a 2.0, and many programs they can't even get into unless they're at a 2.5 or even higher. So we completely revamped that. You can see the new standards that are there. With those new standards, go ahead, next one. With those new standards, we also increased another level of notification, I guess you could call it, which we call academic warning. And when students go on either academic warning or probation, then we also implemented an automatic, a required meeting with their advisor, and also they had to attend these success seminars. Interestingly, there were people who thought that by doing this that we would lose students and that we would actually see decreases in numbers. On the contrary, it didn't make any, we didn't have any negative implications that came out of that at all. So, go ahead.
The next thing we looked at really was enforcing policies we already had on our books that were helpful and put in place that were a long time ago for great reasons. And one of those was this major selection piece. We have a policy on our books that says by the 60th hour, students have to select a major. And we weren't enforcing that because we had this mentality that said, well, free choice. Again, we've learned a lot about choice in this conference. But free choice, and students are the authors of their own experience. And if they don't choose by 60, that must mean that they're not ready to choose yet. Of course, the literature on this says those that are early major choosers are more successful, they graduate faster. But the key piece here is this career development piece, and that is our job is to help them be ready to choose a major, not necessarily force them to choose a major when they're not ready to do that. So again, we're putting the pieces in place to do that. If they haven't done it, as they hit 45 hours, we have somebody, we're calling them and saying, you need to get in here, you need to do the career development things. Focus is a program we use on our campus. And so there are lots of supports that are part of that. Another one is admissions appeals. we had gotten really, really loose on this admission appeals, and what we found out that we had 88 appeals in this last year. We had 88 appeals. 33 of those were granted, and they actually went out to a faculty committee, and there was a several-day process to make this happen, and a lot of work that went around it to decide whether this student should actually be admitted on appeal, either into a presidential exception or limited admission category. Well, after one term, only 8 of those students actually had met the criteria to continue on in their enrollment. And so we essentially adopted a harsher stance and said, no, extenuating circumstances means extenuating circumstances. The exceptions shouldn't become the rule, which they were doing, and we reduced the number of appeals, and then those students then get the support that they need to actually be successful. Again, we thought that would, that's 33 students maybe that wouldn't come. Well, the truth is that we probably then in the students, in the 8, we actually end up with more students enrolled for a longer time because of this.
We're reviewing lots and lots of policies. We have policies that actually are barriers to graduation, and we're kind of like shooting ourselves in the foot. So one of the things that we're working on right this very minute is we're looking at our withdrawal policy and also our retake policy, because it's wide open. Students right now can withdraw from a course as many times as they want to withdraw, and students can retake a course as many times as they want to retake, and they get the last grade of the course that they took. This is not helping our students at all. It is very damaging for their financial aid. It is taking up course seats that would be available to other students when they choose to withdraw partway into the semester. And we find that we're hearing this from faculty, well, it's okay, I'll go ahead and I'll register for this extra class. I may not really want to keep it. If I don't like what I'm doing and I'm not keeping up well with it, I'll go ahead and just drop it. So they're not going into their plan with a very purposeful decision about, here, I'm going to go forward and I'm going to do good work. I'm going to do the effort that I need to do. So we are looking at putting a limit on that. We're exploring the literature right now and what a lot of different institutions are doing, and we're getting close to a decision on that. The other thing we're also looking at is the administrative withdrawal policy. Right now, faculty can withdraw a student from their class for many reasons. What many of them don't realize is that when they do that, they're making a financial decision for that student, because it can affect that student's financial aid. They may have to pay back part of that financial aid, the loans. It can affect their athletic eligibility. It can also affect whether they can remain on their parents' health insurance. So we're looking at something that we can work through our dean's offices, and we can, rather than a faculty would make a recommendation to administratively withdraw, but we'll actually look at what the consequences will be for that student before we would allow that to happen.
Just like many of you, we are implementing and implemented DegreeWorks. We are one of the early adopters of this, and certainly it gives us a lot of ability to actually work with our students in ways that are very, very personal to them and very clear to them. Basically, what we're attempting to do, and where we're kind of moving forward with this, is this whole concept of getting to students who are off track. And we can learn that through DegreeWorks. Through the reporting tools, we can do that. It allows us to market specific courses to students that they need. So it really tells you which courses students must take and which courses students may take. And so there's some academic planning pieces of that. And then probably the best part about that is the students taking responsibility for their own academic planning. They have direct access. We have lots of people to help them with this, but really the students can step up and take responsibility. Again, a little thing. DegreeWorks is a big thing, but in terms of the process and the tool for the student, it's just one part of that process.
This is another committee that's come out of our Presidential Commission, course backlogs, and analyzing what are the courses that are in the highest demand? What are the courses that students are having trouble getting into? You'd think that we'd have this figured out by now. But nobody, well, I wouldn't say that. That's been going on. Analyses have been going on for a long time, but there's still some backlogs and some issues that we're having. They're showing up in two areas repeatedly. The foreign languages, we have this incredible backlog in foreign languages, such that we've got our juniors and seniors taking all of the seats when our freshmen ought to be taking those classes, and they can't get in. So we are looking at figuring out exactly how many students need those particular sequences. We're going to put some extra resources in it to clear out the backlog for the juniors and the seniors, and then begin advising our freshmen to get in there when they first come into our institution. The other courses that we're seeing backlogs in, we've heard this over and over in this session, is the anatomy and physiology for our pre-nursing majors. It's a real problem. Also the medical microbiology. The kinds of things we're looking at are enrollments, registration attempts, wait time to get into courses, transient permission requests, and the high demand courses.
And then again, like many of you, we're beginning the process of doing early alert, early intervention. Again, this is one of the top 5 that came out of our special commission on improving graduation rates. We use a program called MapWorks. There are many different types of programs out there. Essentially, it's looking at how early can you define if a student's in trouble, not just predictability, which we can do ahead of time based on lots of different variables, but we can also then look at the reality. Within the 3rd or 4th week of the term, students take students take a survey that then tells us a lot of things about that student, not just the academic, but also in several dimensions: social dimensions, financial dimensions, risky behaviors that they have. Again, we're very much a residential campus, so we have to work on those kind of things. And it really gives us then the tool then to use to do our early intervention. We are also, again, many of you already have a summer transition program. Not going to talk much about it, but it'll end up being about 10% of our freshman class actually comes in during the summer. We believe that early intervention, that early connection with students that are at the lower end of our admission scale, we're not going to raise admission standards. We're going to take those students and get them into these programs. We believe parents and students alike will want to do this. But again, a more incomplete or a more complete and integrated type of an experience, very intense. It'll get them ready and continue on for the fall.
While Scott's working on the summer bridge for our at-risk students, I'm working on a summer bridge program for our STEM majors. We're new into the BOR STEM Consortium this year, doing a lot of interesting things. Probably, I'm not going to talk to you about it much, but to tell you that many of the activities that we're doing for students in the at-risk summer bridge, we're going to work together with that particular program and bring our STEM students into some of those. So we're kind of leveraging resources, running those programs during the same semesters.
Again, we talked to you about the President's Special Commission to Improve Graduation Rates. It really was a beginning of culture change. One of the core documents that we used, everything old is new again, and if you go back to 2005, Askew created a study that was really a core document and a core study that we looked at in terms of how this works and how you actually create sustainable change. And that report was called the Graduation Rate Study, and it's called Student Success in State Colleges and Universities. And really it looked at why some state-supported colleges and universities do unusually well at retaining and graduating students, way beyond what you would expect. Some of you may have even been involved in that study in terms of being on campuses. And essentially what it found was that it wasn't the things that they did. It wasn't, all of these places had first-year experience programs. All of them had career development activities. All of them had the things. But what the ones that did extremely well, what they did was have a culture that supported it. And that's where we started with this. It isn't about the things. We have all those things too. But if you're not actually executing them well and being smart about how you're doing it for your population, then it really doesn't matter. And that really led us to then the main. One of the main features of that report was this concept of the partnership between academic affairs and student affairs. And it is so critical. And Myrna and I it's almost like a marriage, like I have. We work on it every day, this partnership. And we don't always agree. Matter of fact, we have something right now that we're disagreeing on. Not this very moment, but this moment in time. But what we do know is that we're both committed to making this happen and doing it right for the students. And I couldn't imagine doing this without that partnership. If I had to do this alone in student affairs, I just can't imagine doing that. And it goes even as far as getting to the budget table when you're making the sausage, doing the sausage process that actually gets you to the final budget. Student affairs actually recommending money for academic affairs. We are that close that we're able to do those kind of things. And so it's the relationship that makes that happen.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. This culture change business is messy, and it's lengthy, and it's ongoing. But it's an exciting work. It's a very exciting work. We used John Cotter's leading change model as we began to bring together the Presidential Commission. It's a nice framework for leading you through this very complicated kinds of work. Gives you an idea of how to approach it. If you look that there's 8 steps there, that very first one, establishing a sense of urgency, that occurred, we didn't have to do that. The Board of Regents did that for us. So, they said that we're going to pay attention to graduation rates, we're going to pay attention to performance-based funding. So they did that, and you can see all the various steps that occur there. We're at step 6 right now. We're generating short-term wins with these 5 different areas that we're tackling. We're going to get some results. We're going to look at the data, and we're going to improve, and then we're going to go back and tackle more out of those 60 recommendations. But it's been a great progress. We are seeing palpable changes and institutional change. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, an outstanding panel, much food for thought. And I think that, I hope Dr. Treisman maybe was in the room. I'm not sure if he was or not. But what you're seeing here is real evidence of some of the systemic work going on across the system, the partnerships going on across the system, that as you're working this afternoon, we hope you'll reach out again to colleagues, because what we want here is for you to see evidence of what's going on, and feel free to reach out and work with others. At this point, and a couple of other points. You see these institutions looking at their own institutional policies, and if there are system policies, and Dr. Morgan mentioned it this morning, don't let that stop you. Come to us. We're ready to move the mountains. So please, the whole idea here is don't let policy stop you. We're going to move things. It's going to happen. You saw here both big things and little things matter. So it's a both. So at this point, we're going to take a break. We're going to start promptly at 10:20 back here. So thank you all very much.